Alright, so in the previous chapter we have seen how we can perform the error handling in a better way, and now we are going to start a new chapter, which is authentication and authorization. So this is a very important topic because in any secure application there needs to be a proper way of handling users and granting and revoking the privileges for the corresponding resources. Therefore, it is very important to have a proper understanding about how to have a better authentication and authorization workflow. So authentication is about, basically it's about focusing on verifying the identity of a user. So you may encounter the several instances where you have to enter your email or password or something like that as a credentials for a system. Then the system will do a checkup and it will say whether you have a verified whether you are a verified user or not, right? So if you look at this diagram, you can see that first, if you are a user, you will enter your email and password as credentials to grant the access for specific resources available on a server. So what server basically do is, first it will check your user database and it will identify whether your credentials are correct or not. And if your credentials are correct, which means you are a verified user, therefore you probably get the data as a response. But if you are not verified, which means you are entered some sort of incorrect credentials, therefore it will return some sort of exception by saying your email or password are incorrect, so something like that. And authorization is again comes with the authentication, which means it adds up this sort of additional layer. So in authentication, basically it will check the verifiability of the user, and in the authorization it will check whether the user is actually allowed to use that resource or not. For example, let's say there are several user types. There could be having several user types in a system. Let's say admin and maybe manager and normal user, something like that. So the privileges that are assigned to admin are not commonly assigned to general users, right? So there is a authorization mechanism in order to distinguish the privileges of admin and general user. Otherwise, if we simply just verifying the email and password, we are granting the resources, what will happen is that any user that is come to the system may able to use all of the resources, which is not quite good. So in order to have some sort of a sanction, we need to have a authorization blockage where it checks the user who is verified is actually allowed to use that specific resource or not, right? So normally we are using priority matrix to achieve this task. So if the system is quite large, having different type of resources and user types, what we do is basically we do a priority matrix checkup and identify whether the user is allowed to use the resource or not. But in this tutorial, we can simplify this task by simply checking the relevant user types, right? But in a more advanced system, what will happen is that the users will be assigned each and every resource category, and this priority matrix will define whether the user type is allowed to access that resource or not, right? So that's the authorization. And we are using JWT, which stands for JSON Web Token, to achieve this task. So JSON Web Token is basically a secure communication protocol where you use some sort of a token object to grant the access for resources. So if you look at this diagram, you can simply understand that initially the browser, which means the client side, will send a request as a login by providing their usernames and password, and a server will basically generate a JWT secret with a secret. So this is sort of a encoded object where it encapsulates your details to access a specific resource, and it is a secret because in the server side we do some sort of a encryption mechanism. Then you can, or then that token can be secured, right? Then once that object is generated, we will send to the browser. So browser will basically store that object in its local storage or cookie or whatever. Then whenever a client want to access for a specific resource, now we don't need to check each and every resources or priority metrics. All we have to do is we send our JWT. So in the server side, server will basically check the JWT. So first is check the signature of the JWT, and if it is verified, the server will simply grant the access for the specific resource. So this will simplify our process. Otherwise, by checking each and every resource access for each call won't be quite performance effective, right? But by using JWT, we can easily do the authorization stuff, and we can simply grant or revoke the access for the user. Then basically, if we have the access, we will send the response back to the client, and if we don't have the access, basically we will send some sort of an exception. Right, so that's the workflow, and in the coming up tutorial, let's see how we can implement this stuff on Express.js.